This presentation is available for MCLE self-study credit. If you would like to receive credit, you must take 3 actions. First, click the Show More text below on our YouTube page. The text will expand and show a link to download the handout materials. Once you finish watching this presentation, please click the quiz link to receive self-study credit. Once the quiz is successfully completed, you will receive a certificate via email within 72 hours. We hope you enjoy the presentation.
I have the pleasure of introducing the Honorable Elizabeth Pfeffer. Judge Elizabeth Pfeffer recently retired from the Los Angeles Superior Court after 13 years of service. Judge Pfeffer served nearly her entire judicial career in the downtown Los Angeles Stanley Moss Courthouse. She presided over an unlimited jurisdiction civil independent calendar court for 6 years, a civil trial court for 3 years, and a family law court for 4 years. Judge Pfeffer has presided over more than 75 civil jury trials, more than 500 civil bench trials, hundreds of evidentiary hearings, and numerous settlement conferences with a diverse range of complex factual and legal issues. Judge Pfeffer is available as a mediator, arbitrator, and referee in all areas of civil law and family law. Now to you, Judge Pfeffer.
Thank you, Hayward, for that nice introduction, and thank you all for being here. I appreciate it. I know we'd all would, like to see each other once again in person, but in the meantime, yeah, it's kind of the best we can do. And I'm here in ADR's Century City offices. So competence is one of those required MCLE classes that we have to take, and we've all sat through many of them. And I'm sure everyone's kind of, pandemiced out at a certain point. We've kind of 10 months into the lockdown, and we've seen countless articles and stories about, blankety blank in a pandemic. But under kind of normal circumstances, mental health and substance abuse issues are important. But especially now we've got the pandemic, we're way into it, kind of no end in sight, no date that we know of will be coming up of when it's kind of back to normal. Everyone's social distancing and isolating. We've got the lockdowns. So those are some concerns. So kind of to the surprise, let's see, I can't do share screen. Kind of to the surprise of no one, I saw a Gallup poll that just came out in December called Americans' Mental Health Rating Sink to New Low. And I won't get into it, but basically Americans have been asked by the Gallup organization every year since 2001 as part of its, they do an annual health and well-being survey every November, whether Americans' own mental and emotional well-being is good, excellent, fair, poor, etc. And so since Gallup has been doing that, the ratings have been much higher, and they've actually dipped to the lowest level ever. This year, it's 76% of Americans rank their mental health as excellent or good, compared to 81 or 91% until this year. And so the pandemic has been taking a toll, again, to no one's surprise. So there's the, if I can see the graphics there, but just, American self-assessment of mental health is just kind of, taking a cliff dive. And the Gallup organization broke it down by demographics, male, female, party identification, weekly, or how often you attend religious service weekly, occasionally, never marital status, age group. And so certainly, the baseline from 2019, different groups ranked differently. But from 2020, across the board, with one exception, and only one exception, Americans' mental health in every category, the self-assessment has declined. And the interesting thing is the only difference, the only increase are those who attend religious service weekly. Actually, their mental health assessment went up 4%. Everyone else, it decreased quite a bit. So again, to no one's surprise. But interestingly, Americans' assessment of physical health is the same. People kind of rank the physical health the same as it was a year ago. So as it relates to the law, and there's a handout that's available, but law is an inherently stressful profession. It just always has been. We call it the adversarial system for a reason. You have opposing counsel, One of my very good friends is an eye surgeon, and it's kind of interesting because obviously, if she has a bad day of performing eye surgery, I mean, it's disastrous. And versus, the legal profession, you kind of screw up closing argument, or you don't do a great cross-examination, or not a great voir dire, or judge make just a totally erroneous ruling. Obviously, an eye surgeon having a bad day is a disaster. But again, law is inherently stressful, and study after study has shown that those in the legal profession have greater substance abuse issues and also mental health concerns than in other professions. Part of it is just kind of perfection's the norm. I mean, you lost the case, right? Your client technically lost, but you lost the case. So you can always work more. You could always put in more time preparing your case, briefing your case, reading, studying the other side's position. You could always work more. And then also just kind of an ethos of show no weakness. I mean, you're there to exploit the other side's weakness. That's what you do. So law has the inherent stressors in it. Now, of course, at a certain point, we all, ideally come up with coping mechanisms. And I listed some off the top of my head in the outline that's available. I listed restaurants twice because I think I really miss restaurants, but that is part of it. I was reminiscing with a lawyer just last week about the good old days, summer of last year, when we could go to the Hollywood Bowl and enjoy, pre-concert meal with friends and enjoy a nice concert outside. Obviously, Lakers fans, Dodgers fans, going to the beach. Yeah, LA County's trails were closed for a while, shortly after the shutdown. All the art classes, music classes, museums, everything that we have that we could do, just getting together with friends. That's all been shut down one way or the other. So we have the pandemic related shutdowns that have really completely changed the way we live. And it's interesting that the Gallup poll shows that the only increase in mental health assessment are those Americans who attend a weekly religious service. But of course, churches shut down for Easter Sunday and Christmas, and synagogues closed for the high holidays, mosques closed. Places of worship are closed for the most part in California. So it's very challenging for everyone. Another huge stressor for mental health is that all the in-person things. Obviously, we all wish we could be in person. We miss our in-person bar events. But think of those trying to recover from an addiction, an AA or NA. I mean, part of it's the in-person. I mean, we have that expression, I'm there for you. I mean, you're there. You're physically there. You show up to a support group meeting. It's a big difference if there are 2 people listening to you versus 20 people. And of course, we can get our information from Zoom. When this meeting's over, you just click leave and you're done. But after an AA meeting or an NA meeting or any support group, you just click the button and you're done. You linger and talk in the parking lot, and there's a whole social aspect. Same with bar events. When the presentation's over, you can still talk to each other. So a lot is missed by having no in-person component of so many events. And of course, all we call the life cycle events that were canceled: weddings, bar mitzvahs, and trips, graduations. I had a friend who was scheduled to get married. Obviously, the wedding was off last summer, but the registrar recorder in LA was literally not issuing wedding licenses, marriage licenses for a period of time. So it's not like, oh, we can do our Zoom wedding. No, you literally can't get married because the county was not issuing a marriage license. So these are huge events. So, graduate from high school only once, or college only once, or turn 13 only once. Hopefully get married only once. But these are things that they're just gone. We can put some things on pause, but life goes on. So in the outline, I've listed some other sources of stress. Obviously, there's the professional stress. You're lawyers, you're in the legal profession. Courts are closed. Your clients can't get their day in court. There's a dispositive motion that either you filed on behalf of your client or the other side filed, and well, is this case going to be kicked out of court? Or are there causes of action that are going to be dismissed from this case? Well, we don't know. We don't know. Or think about, obviously, many of you had clients who were hoping for the trial last year. May of 2020 or June of 2020 was your trial date. I know, as a litigator, I know how much preparation goes into that. From your client's perspective, you've got this case that will go to finality and be tried in June of 2020. that's all gone. And of course, the court's closed and your client's financial problems, all of those problems. Many lawyers have told me, not only your office is closed, they had to lay off their staff, associates, research attorneys, clerks. I know a great legal secretary is really hard to get, and you have to lay off the legal secretary or the receptionist. There's just not the income coming in. That's tough. That's very, very tough. So you have all this professional stress. And again, cancellation of bar events and seminars. It's nice to see, not just networking, but just it is nice to see people and that you have something in common with. All that's canceled. On the personal level, all the stressors, my gosh. I mean, first, the illness, the virus, being sick, worrying about being sick, loved ones being sick, there's that worry. But a huge, huge problem, kids home from school. I'm a mom, my kids were home from school. I don't think they got as good a quality of education online. And of course, they weren't with their friends. They didn't play sports. They didn't, all the normal things kids do, all the sports seasons and practice and choir events and, scouting, that's all gone. The summer vacation trip, it's all gone. So that creates stress. Family members moving back in. I mean, every year, every high school graduation year, I see some homes go for sale that kids are up and out, or kids are out in college. You sell, you downsize from the 2-story to the 1-story, you sell your house, and now you've downsized. Well, now your 30-year-old who was independent needs to move back in. That's stressful for everyone, for the adult child who moves back in and for the parents. And then now do you have enough room for everyone to have a home office? And the kids have a home office where they can have their virtual schoolroom. So many issues. And then obviously you can't see your friends, you can't visit your relatives, you can't participate in your religious community as much as you'd like to. I mean, how many family and community Passover Seders had to go virtual because of the lockdowns? And then doctor's visits, personal care. And then there is an increase in marital problems. And I read quite a few articles and, anecdotally, kind of on both sides of the pond, BBC articles and articles from here that, apparently divorce lawyers, in Britain and in the United States have been getting, more calls about getting divorced. It is tough being around each other all the time, not being on the same page as far as child rearing. Can the kid go out and play with friends or not? Play dates, that just becomes an issue of stress. And of course, marital problems are caused by financial problems. Some families are just really, really hurt. So there's just the undercurrent of marital problems too. And then another source of stress that could affect your mental health is guilt. I mean, we kind of joke about first world problems, like, don't tell me how expensive it was to get the oil change for your Bentley, right? That first world problem. But there is real guilt, that you are healthy and other people around you are not, that you're doing great. Some people are doing better financially now. I know some lawyers working at home, they love it. They said, I don't have to go to court. I'm doing well. I'm busy. It's guilty because others are not doing so well. And obviously for all the stress of families being together, and that is a real stress. Others say, my marriage is better than it was. I have a great relationship with my kids. I enjoy having my kids around. So, but others who aren't doing well, but you enjoy being together more, but others not so much. So just the guilt of you're doing well relative to others around you. So there's that. So a huge part of the stress is the uncertainty. And I mean, certainly when everything was shutting down in March, I was thinking done by Easter, right? And I'm kind of surprised it went into summer, and now here we are. This is the third school semester, if you will, with shutdowns. So when will this end? Well, no one has told us. I think no one really knows. And certainly whenever that date is, it's beyond our control. And, when we send people to prison, we tell them how long they're going for. We don't say, well, we'll just, we'll let you out when we let you out. So obviously it's not the same, but when will kind of the switch be flipped back on and kind of go back to the way we were? If it's March 1st or July 1st, just tell us so we can kind of work around that. We don't have that. So the uncertainty of all of this is driving a huge amount of stress, which again affects our mental health. So in looking at various tips and articles about things that would help with mental health, and just helping ourselves out. The first is gratitude. Every day practice gratitude for whatever we are. in our situation. And that, mankind, we're imperfect. And so sometimes it's the big stuff that gets us, but we don't always are grateful for our health or just the little things in life. You're annoyed with your spouse because you're together all the time. Okay, well, maybe think about, great things that your spouse does. Why did you fall in love with your spouse? Why did you get married? Your kids are annoying the heck out of you. Well, think about some good things. Whatever it is in your life, just express gratitude for that. The next suggestion I've seen a lot is exercise. And, my gym shut down in March. It's still shut down. So can I go to yoga classes anymore or lift weight? Not in the gym, but now there's so many online classes. I know the Peloton, my friends who do, so they love all the classes, and they're YouTube. There's so many exercise classes available. Go for a walk, go for a run, go for a bike ride. I walk every morning. I've seen many more people out in the morning going for walks. It's free, or just ride your bike. Just get out, get some fresh air and get vitamin D from the sun. Or if you're inside, there's so many online classes, so many resources, but just get some exercise. That's important. The next is to meditate and be mindful. So that's kind of, not my thing, but I first kind of heard about meditation and kind of took it seriously about 20 years ago. My husband's late stepfather was a manly man, Air Force veteran, Korean War veteran, very successful in the entertainment industry, won an Emmy Award. And so obviously super successful. And I remember decades ago, he said, every day, set aside time for meditation, even if it's 15 minutes, your 2:15 to 2:30 slot every day. You have to do that. And you meditate? Seems kind of touchy-feely to me from you, but you swore by it. And you have to have some time during the day where your mind just wanders. And for me, for instance, on my morning walk, sometimes I'm deep in thought, but other times it's just, you look at, that's what kind of flower grows well in the shade, or, there's a hummingbird taking a rest on the wire. You have to let your mind wander and do that. It's just essential. So kind of the masters of not mindfulness, but relaxation. Those are my pandemic pooches. We adopted them during the pandemic. And by the way, adoptions of dogs are up, but they're totally at bliss with the world. I'm sure their thoughts are pretty blank right now, but dogs are really good at that. But seriously, you have to, you just have to kind of mentally check out, even if it's for 15 minutes a day. The next suggestion I've read from many sources is read a book. I mean, we've all, had the experience of being immersed in a great fiction novel where a great author just creates this world and sucks you in and you're there. And after 15 minutes or so of reading a good book, good novel, you're there. You've taken your mind off the stress of the world. And then finally, kind of create lighthearted moments, just laugh and have fun. That's super important. So in looking at other kind of sources of inspiration of what to do, we're shut down. We just can't do what we normally do. We're all on top of each other, finding spaces for school and work at home with no end in sight. So I looked at a book I read many years ago. My copy is actually yellow. It's called Man's Search for Meaning by Dr. Viktor Frankl, Man's Search for Meaning. And it's in the outline. It's a slender book. It's 200 pages. It can be easily read quickly. So Dr. Frankl, as some of you may know, he was a neurologist and a psychiatrist in Vienna before World War II. He was head of the neurology department. He is kind of a psychiatrist. He was kind of interested in suicide prevention, even pre-World War II. And he's a Jew. He was deported. He actually ultimately went to 4 concentration camps, including Auschwitz. And ultimately, he lost his mother and his father and his brother and his wife in the concentration camps. They all perished. So he's obviously, talk about kind of like the worst situation you can imagine. But he's a medical doctor and a psychiatrist and neurologist. So he was kind of looking around at the human condition in the camps, obviously trying to survive day to day, but just, what can he learn from this? So after the war, in 1946, he wrote the book in German that became Man's Search for Meaning, and it was published in English in 1959. So Dr. Frankl's takeaways were that meaning is an essential part of being human. And the Shaw, my dogs, they're not thinking about the meaning of life. That's, sleep, eat, chase a tennis ball, check out a squirrel, right? But it's man, and uniquely man, that meaning is an essential part of our being. And we're all successful. I mean, being a lawyer is who you are. It's not just what you do. I practice law, I take depositions. No, you are a lawyer, or you are a judge. And when you're a lawyer and the courts are closed and you can't do what you do, that affects you. You're a wife, you're a husband, you're a mother, you're a father, you're a son or a daughter. That's who you are. It's an essential part of who you are. And the shutdowns have changed that. You're a son or a daughter, but you can't go visit your parent who's in a facility, a nursing home. You can't visit your parent. So you can't be the good son or good daughter that you were just a year ago. You can't do those things. So this affects who we are. So Dr. Frankel talked in his book about how one arrives at the meaning of life. And one way is to create something. I mean, we've all created law practices, right? So college and law school, you've created a law practice for yourself. But you create a marriage, you create a family, you can create a movie or a novel. Creating gives us meaning. Another thing that gives humans meaning is experiencing something or encountering someone. So travel is very, very meaningful. We couldn't travel last year. March 1st, all of our plans for spring break and summer vacation and winter break, your travel plans just, gone. But that's an essential, travel is essential. Or just experiencing something. I mean, just being a friend, being in love. The experiences give us meaning. And of course, Dr. Frankel noted when you're in a concentration camp, you can't do that. You can't do those things. But he said, there's one thing that every human being retains in the worst of circumstances that are completely beyond your control. And look, it was beyond his control whether he would live or die that day because of the extreme circumstances. But one can choose one's attitude. You can always choose your attitude of how you react to something. So even in the face of tremendous suffering, whether it's the Holocaust or the shutdowns, whatever, the destruction of your business, the destruction of your family, you can always choose how you react to things, as difficult as it is. And he said, even after the war in his clinical practice, he would see patients who are paralyzed from the waist down or neck down, and you think, oh my gosh. But he said some of those patients had a great outlook on life. They chose to turn it into something good and to be more happy and more grateful and again, gratitude, appreciative of what you have. So Dr. Frankel wrote, man does not simply exist, but always decides what his existence will be, what he will become in the next moment. And Dr. Frankel also said, every human being has the freedom to change at any instant. And he referred to the defiant power of the human spirit, that under the worst circumstances, we could choose to prevail. And he also said that the prisoner who had lost faith in his future was doomed. So obviously the worst circumstances, but those people who still had faith, they might be able to make it. But if you lose faith, that's it, that you're doomed. So those were his takeaways. And again, it's an excellent book that I would recommend. Another source of recommendations of how do you deal with the stress? Again, the pandemic, the shutdowns, all of our lives upended with no end in sight. So kind of towards the beginning of the lockdowns in March, there was an interview granted by Natan Sharansky. Maybe some of you may remember who's Anatoly Sharansky in the 70s. He was a Soviet Jew who was kind of the spokesman for the refuseniks. There were certain Soviet Jews who weren't given exit visas to leave the Soviet Union. So he was one of the Jews who was a spokesman and tried to get people be allowed to leave. And so he was arrested by the KGB in 1977. He was convicted of espionage and treason and sent to a Soviet prison. Again, certainly not a good circumstance. So he's sent to a Soviet prison. Much of the time he spent was in solitary confinement. And so after he was released in 1986 due to the intervention of the United States, he went to Israel, changed his name from Anatoly to Natan. He's kind of somewhat of a national treasure in Israel. Ran for the Knesset. He's a member of parliament for a while. He's written books. And so he's kind of a beloved and revered person, and understandably so. I mean, 9 years in a Soviet prison is tough, and he made it through. So So he was asked for advice. Like, what do you know, all these kids are being locked down from school and whatnot. What are your suggestions for getting through it? So he had 5 suggestions. So the first suggestion from Natan Sharansky is, remember, this is a huge global battle. This is a pandemic, obviously, definitionally worldwide pandemic. So when he was in Soviet prison, it's not me. It's not me, Sharansky. There's this worldwide struggle against communism, for freedom of religion. The Jews in the Soviet Union were oppressed. He saw himself as part of a global, wider struggle. It wasn't just personal against him. So he said that perspective helped him get through it, and that others were experiencing it as well. The next suggestion said, look, he didn't know if he'd ever be released from the Soviet prison. That might be it the rest of his life. So obviously not as dramatic, but again, when will this end? If you told us March 1st or October 1st, we could kind of work around it, but we don't know. It's kind of like the kids saying, are we there yet? When? We don't know. And it's completely beyond our control. We can't say when it's going to be. So the end date's not knowable or within our control. So Sharansky's tip was to make a plan that depends on you. So you can read a book in 3 days. You can read Man's Search for Meaning, over the weekend, but do something. You can, you want to learn a musical instrument. One friend's taking a baking class, and she's been baking, bread every week, but come up with a plan that you can control the end date. So, and have we acquired a skill or, learned some task in the last few months? So pick something where the end date depends on you. The next suggestion from Sharansky is keep your sense of humor. And again, not a lot of humor in the Soviet prison, but he would just kind of mentally joke about just the idiotic, prison guards there. And even Dr. Frankel in his book said, even in the concentration camps, that the prisoners would try to find something humorous to laugh about. So again, obviously not as an extreme circumstance, but there's so much funny stuff out there. I mean, we fired up an old movie we saw 20 years ago that made me laugh then and made me laugh now. I'm kind of like a Monty Python and the Holy Grail fan. I won't do the fake British accent, but I like absurd humor. Just do something that makes you laugh. Watch an old movie or something that makes you laugh, but find some humor in the situation. The next suggestion from Natan Sharansky was to engage in a hobby. And so back in March, he said that he played thousands of chess games in his head. He was that good at chess. And when he was released from prison, he actually played the world chess champion, Garry Kasparov, and beat him. So he'd been playing chess in his head. Now since then, the Netflix show Queen's Gambit, which talk about mental health and substance abuse, that show kind of hits both ends. But that main character would play chess games in her head. I'm not capable. I mean, maybe I could do tic-tac-toe in my head. I'm not chess-minded, but just a hobby. Stamp collecting, coin collecting. Winston Churchill famously painted. He wrote a book, Painting as a Pastime. Gardening. I'm sure many of you know Victor Chavez, beloved, fantastic judge of our court. He recently passed away at the age of 90. He grew Cymbidium orchids, and now went to his house a few weeks before he passed away, and he had just, over 50 potted orchids, and I have 3 of them now. My goal is to keep them going and blooming, and it's as Victor's script in Sharpie on the pot, what the bloom will be, because there are no flowers on it yet. But gardening, just some hobby. You have to get your mind off it. And if you can involve your family, and also baking bread together or making cookies together, or whatever it is, building a model railroad that you never had a chance to do, some hobby is important to help with the stress. And the final tip from Natan Sharansky is to connect with others. Again, he's in solitary confinement in a Soviet prison. So he said on Passover, for instance, he did a Seder in his cell with bread, because it connected him to the Jewish people who've been, doing the Seders thousands of years, for generations and generations. So on that moment, he thought, okay, I'm in my cell here, but Jews around the world are doing this, and we're all part of this. And he's thought, I'm still part of this community. So again, reach out to people. I mean, there's so many online bar events. I think even LACWA is doing something about stress in the pandemic, but there's so many events. But also just call somebody. I mean, man is a social creature. We need to see people. Just pick up the phone and call someone and reach out. and set aside the time to be with friends. So those are some tips from Sharansky. So I found those are all helpful. The next is about substance abuse in a pandemic. And again, this is going. The state bar has kind of sanctioned a group called the Other Bar. And Greg Dorst of the Other Bar is very helpful, and he provided me the PowerPoint, which will be made available to people attending. So again, this PowerPoint was put together, obviously before the pandemic, but even before then, lawyers had a higher incidence of substance abuse. And we kind of touched on just some things on inherent to the legal profession that cause stress, but lawyer vulnerability, etc. There was a study done by the American Bar Association with the Betty Ford Group, and you can see the demographic breakdown, again, way pre-pandemic. But this is, substance use in the last 12 months before the survey. And so here's kind of the takeaway, and I won't read the whole slide, but basically, pre-pandemic, 21% of licensed employed lawyers qualify as problem drinkers, 28% struggle with some level of depression, and 19% demonstrate symptoms of anxiety. So again, that's pre-pandemic. So preparation for this, I kind of looked online to see where we are as a country. So apparently, I've seen several statistics from several sources that more than 20 million people in the United States have what's called a substance use disorder, SUD. 20 million Americans, 2 million of those, it's opioids. So it's a serious problem. And has the usage gone up during the pandemic? Yes, it has. So the Journal of the American Medical Association reported back in September an increase, as well as other sources. Now, the American Association of Medical Colleges, a huge problem is not only is use going up, but they've found that there's a failure to deliver effective treatment for opioid use disorder. So what that means is people aren't getting the treatment. I mean, you're overdosing on fentanyl. Okay, but the emergency rooms are full with COVID patients. So sorry, Mr. Fentanyl, addict, we need the beds for people suffering from COVID or other issues. So there's that. Again, people aren't getting the human contact of the AA-NA meetings. That human contact is gone. Social distancing, people are overdosing alone. There's no one to call 911. So it's kind of not able to treat the issue. Obviously, we've got anxiety, depression, grief, isolation, financial worries, changes, just uncertainty. And there's a nationwide kind of drug lab company, Millennium Health, just in May. They looked at kind of urine samples from mid-March to May, and they found a 32% increase in non-prescribed fentanyl, 20% increase in methamphetamine, and 10% in cocaine usage just in those few months. So these are all issues. So as the lawyers, the study found that attorneys in the first 10 years of practice experience the highest incidence of these problems, 31%. And again, the study showed as longevity in the practice of law increases, dependency numbers go down. Well, again, why is that? Well, I mean, you hit your stride after a certain point. I mean, the 12th voir dire should be a lot easier than your second voir dire. Or, you've been practicing law for 13 years, it's easier than year 2. So at a certain point, you hit your stride, you get better at what you do, and also just you've learned to balance it. But all those balance things, lifting weight at the gym, going to your yoga class, going to the museum, that stuff's gone. So these are real issues to do. And I looked at kind of an unlikely source for an MC Lee, but the Wine Spectator with a very unhappy looking chef on the cover, understandably, from the July-August issue. And the Wine Spectator reported in its grapevine, pandemic changes U.S. wine market. This was as of summertime. Now, overall wine consumption and sales went down because restaurants are a huge source of wine consumption. Overall, it's total U.S. wine sales, went down overall because of the restaurants. But I thought this statistic was surprising. So the Nielsen organization reported an increase in the off-premise sales during the week of March 21. So right after we shut down, 1 week, 66% increase, a 66% increase in the purchase of wine, grocery stores, wine shops, bringing home right when the shutdown started. And then it continued that, people are stocking up. So overall retail sales are up 26%. This is as of the summertime. Direct to consumer shipping up 15%. So kind of the online, wine clubs, that's up too. So people are drinking more wine and imbibing more of that. So going back to the PowerPoint. So what do you do when your coping mechanisms are gone? And that's kind of what we've been discussing. So the takeaway from the study is that attorneys have problematic drinking. It's hazardous, harmful, otherwise consistent with alcohol use disorders at a higher rate than other professional populations. Again, why lawyers have higher stress and higher substance abuse than, say, eye surgeons. Again, we have all these factors. And look, when I was 1L in my study group, we were kind of asking ourselves, are lawyers born or made, right? Do you have the sweet, nice, happy-go-lucky, laid back person who goes to law school and you're turned into the litigator monster? Or is it, the stereotype? Or is it, law attracts a certain personality type? Well, I mean, how many people have you run into and said, oh, I became a lawyer. My parents said you should become a lawyer because you like to argue all the time, right? So, law attracts a certain personality type, just every profession, being a kindergarten teacher attracts a certain personality type. So again, it's conflict, it's show no weakness, it's exploit the other side's weakness, it's all of that. So it's a stressful profession and has stresses built in the profession. So again, there's your personality type. Again, there's a certain personality type. Not everybody, obviously, but are there generalizations that can be made? And same thing, there's unavoidable stress, too much time at the office again, but can you really spend too much time at the office when you're preparing for a big case, and it's a big case for your client? So again, the legal culture. So signs and symptoms, again, this is all pre-pandemic. So okay, behavior changes, and ADR will make this PowerPoint available after the presentation. But work product changes. But here's the thing, lawyers have to perform. Just like my friend has to show up sober for eye surgery and not hungover. If you have to be in court every day at 8:30, appearing before a judge, and you're going to be asked questions, are you going to be like totally hungover from the night before? Are you certainly going to be drinking a mimosa with your breakfast before you go to court and argue a big motion for your client? Heck no. And you go through security screening. Obviously, you can't bring alcohol to court, but I have to say, my staff has never told me, oh yeah, this lawyer checked in and they could smell alcohol in his or her breath. I mean, lawyers typically, don't show up to court impaired. And certainly imagine coming back from court, going back to your law office and seeing your secretary and receptionist and your partners and associates, and you've obviously had something to drink. I mean, that situation's not going to last long. But now everything's remote, right? So lawyers are working remotely, the courts are remote. You don't have to show up to court all dressed up and gussied up at 8:30 in the morning. So why not drink, right? I mean, and who's going to know as long as you're doing your work? So this is where kind of the substance abuse and the shutdowns in effect, like for instance, setting aside all the health issues of drinking, your liver and this and that and that, why don't professionals drink more? Again, you have to show up to court, you have to drive, right? I mean, I've been to enough bar events at the Biltmore and the Jonathan Club. I'm just having Perrier because I'm driving. I'm not gonna, I don't want to get arrested for DUI. It'd be a disaster, right? So Perrier for me, but everything's remote. You're not driving. Why not? So that is part of the increase in substance abuse. So, well, where do you have to go? You're not driving anywhere and everything's remote. But it's also important because, again, who's going to notice that you're irritable or you're not coming to work, smelling like alcohol, right? No one's seeing this. It's just you on your computer at home. Parents changes weight gain. I mean, weight gain, we're sitting at home, but no, no one's, no bells are going off like, God, I think that guy has a drinking problem. Or I think she's, too much into the, I think she's got an opioid addiction. No one's really seeing that. So all kind of like the signs and symptoms of, late for appointments, calling in sick, not returning phone calls, it's kind of harder to catch this and harder for the people in your life to say, hey, you've got a problem. bar complaints. Now, years ago, 10 years ago, when I had a family law assignment, there was a lawyer who showed up, and I think he was high, just from where I was, red faced and angry. And, there are acrimonious hearings in family law, but it wasn't that type of case. It was just, and so I had a conversation with my bailiff afterwards, like, hey, if you need to do an assessment of someone, and my bailiff said, oh yeah, the opposing counsel told me that guy's totally high. So, but if you're appearing remotely and, no video, who's to know, right? So it's harder to catch these things. And so it's important that you've got someone in your life you can monitor. And then if you see someone, you need to speak up. So kind of definitions, obviously, drinking a glass of wine or two, or if there are no adverse consequences, it's not an issue. Everyone's got a certain level. But where there are adverse consequences, again, you show up late to court, you're smelling of alcohol in the office, those are adverse consequences. You're not going to court and you're not going into the office, who's to know? And that's why these are important things to monitor. Again, questions. Felt you need to cut down your drinking. People annoyed by criticizing, you could see it there. We felt guilty about drinking. And I thought, oh, you need an eye opener. You need a drink to start your day off. But again, if you're appearing remotely in court, who's to know that you're not drinking mimosa while you're, arguing emotion? Mimosa emotion. No one's to know that if everything's remote with the shutdowns. So these questions are important for self-assessment. And addiction does affect your brain, and your brain's forming new pathways. And trying to get off of addiction is kind of this holistic approach. It's not just, oh, I'll just stop using this stuff. Social. I mean, if you just are drinking just to get drunk, then, most people don't want to be around someone who drinks to get drunk. There's obviously social drinking, but if that's all you want to do, then all your friends are just kind of, my friends just want to get drunk with me. Like, well, if you want to pull yourself out of that situation, you need new friends. It's hard. So it's not just, I won't drink anymore. It's just changing a lot about your life. And, a lot of addictions need a medically supervised withdrawal. Again, pay attention and self-care. 12-step programs have been very effective for many people, different approaches to overcoming addictions. But again, changing kind of your thing. But again, we're all shut down. We're not with our friends anymore. We're not at bar events anymore. We're not like, hey, I think you've had too much. We're missing the community. We're not getting together as we did just a year ago. So it's very important, again, to monitor yourself, monitor those in your life. And if so, again, reach out to people and see how they're doing, because a lot of people are not doing well. Oh, fine. Well, a lot of people aren't fine. And so it's important. And again, just, do what you're supposed to do and be where you're supposed to be. All these techniques for helping, overcome. And again, this is from the other bar. There are many groups, other bars available, and these are all confidential. Obviously, if you think you have a problem, call them. There's no stigma. Obviously, people understand, and people want to get better. Religious institutions, meetups, and again, the PowerPoint will be made available with all this contact information. The state bar has a lawyer assistance program that can help, and there's the contact information, and there are many resources. Again, tons of online resources, but the state bar and the different bar groups have those resources available. So again, you'll get all that information. But it's important. Again, we're all isolating. We're out of our routine. We don't know when it's going to end. Hopefully soon. I want to see you all again in person. But again, just reach out to other people. Monitor yourself. It's just strange times, and we'll get through them. We'll get through it. Well, I think we'll be stronger than we were before. But meantime, this is tough. So with that, I think we have questions coming up soon. I know some have been coming in.
Hi, Judge Pfeffer. Okay, we actually have a request. If you could send information, or at least hold up the book again, Dr. Frankel.
Oh, Dr. Frankel, right. So it's in the outline, but right. So Dr. Victor with a K, Viktor. Frankel is Frankl. Victor Frankel, Man's Search for Meaning. And so again, it's really thin book, 200 pages. So Victor with a K, Viktor, Frankel, Frankl, Man's Search for Meaning. And again, talk about gratitude. You read any first person account of the Holocaust, and but he's got incredible insights. So, and I hope you found it helpful.
And somebody asked for the spelling of, is it Nathan Sharansky?
Sharansky, yes.
Please.
I think he may have changed it somewhat. So Sharansky, so it's Natan now, N-A-T-A-N, or Nathan, Natan. It used to be Anatoly, but Sharansky is S-H-A-R-A-N-S-K-Y. So S-H-A-R-A-N-S-K-Y. I remember as a kid, like the Time magazine had like this detente cover with him. So he was in prison from 1977 to 86. So Natan Sharansky. And he's written a few books, I think, See No Evil and Fear No Evil. And he's a thinker, but my gosh, to go through what he did. Oh, good. Someone posted a Viktor Frankl book, right? Good reads, Man's Search for Meaning. And then, there's obviously many, many more insights in the book, but one of the more famous lines from his book is Dr. Frankl said there are only two races, the indecent and the decent. So, the human race, you got indecent and decent, and that's kind of how it breaks out, and everyone's that's ultimately where we all fall. But it's a great book.
Okay, we have a few minutes left.
Okay.
If anybody would like to post any last-minute questions in the Q&A, and while we wait for that, I'd like to take a moment to clarify once more that the link to register to confirm your attendance will be placed in the chat function. There's a Q&A function and a chat function, which are different. In which case, again, the link to register and confirm your attendance that you only have to do once each session, as well as the link to download the material will be placed in the chat function as well. We have a last minute question. It says, can you provide some additional information regarding the other bar?
Yes, again, I got this directly from Greg Dorson. Let me screen share that again. So I sat on a panel, competence panel years ago with Greg Dorst. And so in preparation for this, he's like, take my PowerPoint. So I said, absolutely. So Greg Dorst, D-O-R-S-T. So if you just Google like the other bar, it's called. And I think you have the website up there, the other bar, Greg Dorst. And he gave me handouts and pamphlets. And so this is kind of a summary of what it is, but the other bar. And again, the California State Bar also has resources as well. There's a lawyer assistance program. But again, even over the last few months, the LA County Bar, for instance, has done a great job of online bar events. And I'm not saying that because I did one this summer for them, but almost every day, but again, about stress and, so not just, evidence tutorial. It's, a lot of the nuts and bolts about this, because again, people are isolating, I'm a mom. I see my kids like not playing with other kids and talk to other parents. And, some friends of mine said, yeah, you've got like the introverted kid and this kind of feeds on their introversion. Like now they don't have to go out, they're kind of happy being at home and not seeing other kids. So it's tough. It's tough across the board. So it's important to, to reach out. Just call someone, call me, give me a call, send me an email. So, I think we all, we kind of joke like, oh, a lot of bar events to go to, but we do miss that. And I know, on the bench, on the court, we like going to bar events. We like seeing lawyers. Yeah, it's one thing you're on bench all day in your robe and denied, granted, and you can't kind of be a person, but it is nice to see people, at events and just, hey, we're all kind of human beings. We're doing the best we can. We all love the legal profession. It's a calling for most of us. So if you get to be an advocate and be the voice for someone, it's big stuff and important stuff. And we get to do justice every day. And when we can't, it's very frustrating. Again, it's who we are. So it's important to reach out. So again, with the California Bar Lawyer Assistance Program, LA County Bar, we go to the next slide again. Again, Greg Dorst is the one from the other bar who gave this to me, and all these. And again, just many online resources. I think even the State Bar's website has information about the area.
I still have a few more minutes. let me see.
We can get
Me?
suggestions for world's funniest movies on the chat feature.
Absolutely. Do you know if the other bar is anonymous?
Is what?
Anonymous.
Yes, it is. Yes, because I called Greg Doors to get the PowerPoint. Yes, it is anonymous.
Okay.
That's kind of,
Perfect.
they won't divulge. So, because, you know, I call like, okay, do I have, you know, I have an issue, I just want your PowerPoint. So no, it's very confidential and everyone takes this very seriously. And there's a, you know, there's a community of people who are, you know, they're because, yeah, they want to help you. And you know, unfortunately there is a stigma, you know, and the stigma prevents people from getting help. But look, you know, I read the disciplinary reports in the Daily Journal, and you know, there are lawyers who, you know, had their bar card yanked, and not the substance abuse and mental health issues can manifest in other ways. You know, you're depressed, you've got financial problems, you have to lay off your staff, and there's your client trust account, right? It's just sitting there, right? And I'll just loan myself some money and I'll pay it back in a week. Well, you can read again, you know, State Bar's website and the Daily Journal, the disciplinary section, lawyers who dip in the client's trust account. It's not, no, don't do that. But a lot of it starts with, I've got, you know, substance abuse. I've got mental health, you know, I'm going through a terrible divorce. I'm short on money. I'm depressed. And then, you know, when you're upset and depressed, your better judgment goes away. You get desperate. And again, there's your client trust account, which you should never, ever, ever trust and touch, but people do. So again, but now you're being disciplined by the state bar for doing that. So what's worse? Kind of what's more embarrassing, like getting help for your problem or making it worse? So it's tough. Yes, someone wrote, yes, Monty Python, the Holy Grail. I agree. Although like super silly is Pink Panther Strikes Again, where Clouseau and Kato, or I don't know, I think that's funny. But yes, I think the Holy Grail consistently is the most funny movie. Raising Arizona, also fun. Saw that with the kids. We're blitzing through the whole cinema. Okay, my cousin Vinny. Oh, Spinal Tap, of course, of course.
Judge Pfeffer, if I may, just one more question.
Yes.
So having recently retired from the bench, what do you believe are the pandemic-related frustrations of judges on the bench that attorneys may not realize?
Oh gosh. Well, again, speaking from, you know, civil IC experience, I have many friends in criminal, and they had different sets of frustrations. But you know, you come to civil and do an IC court because you kind of like the captain of your ship. You like your cases, you like the caseload, and you know, you like lawyers, you like ruling on motions. It's very intellectual, but part of it is counter management. That it's frustrating when you can't get a motion heard. You know, I like, you know, we like having motions heard, you know, fairly quickly. We don't, like, it takes a year to get a demur heard. That, and now the backup. So just sweeping everything off, being closed, and then the delays and not being able to take cases to trial. Again, we know people want finality, but just the delay. And then part of it is just not being able to do what you do normally. So the delay is huge. It was huge, and it's an issue. The ref, it's not that the ref, Dennis Leary, bring it, baby. It's all good. The intercostal clavicle, yeah, music, yeah, LA Lawyers Philharmonic and Legal Voices, right? It's all good. Parenthood's good. Youths, right? So, right. But so again, so it's called The Other Bar, and Greg Dorst is DORST. And so they're all wonderful and they're there to help. But again, I've been on a panel with them. And so I've sat through his half-hour presentation on this subject, and it's, you know, it's very powerful. But again, it's always, you know, choose how we react. That's always, we always retain that. It may be hard. Airplane is good. Police Squad, Rodney Dangerfield, Marx Brothers, Night at the Opera, Caddyshack. I'm just reading some of these chats out loud. Bridesmaid was good. Mean Girls, too close to home. I don't want to relive junior high, but I heard it's good.
So with that said, Judge Pfeffer, and the active participation we're getting from the attendees of your request to share funny videos, and the many compliments I read that they've really enjoyed your presentation. Thank you, Judge Pfeffer, for your time. And thank you all for joining us.